the Gandhi studies circle of Miranda House. So that would be so useful.
Yes.
For everyone to know. And also introduce yourself.
Yes, sir. Sir, hello everyone. This is Sanskriti Sundari, President of Study Circle Miranda House. I would like to invite Akshita Gite, our Vice President, to coordinate furthermore this session. Akshita, you are not audible.
Yeah, Akshita, you have to unmute yourself. Akshita, please unmute yourself.
Akshita, you are still not audible. Please try.
To unmute herself.
Oh, sir, she has. Akshita, I think you should stop your video. Stop your video. Still not audible.
Connect probability justice.
Probably there is some net connectivity in her place, I suppose so. Why don't you start, Sanskriti, then? Okay, she has joined.
Now,
Hello, yes, Akshita. Hello.
now,
Yes, please. Please start.
everyone is keeping well. First of all, we all at Gandhi Study Circle give everyone strength to run in these difficult times. The Gandhi Study Circle, Miranda, in collaboration with Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Delhi, is organizing an online certificate course on exploring nonviolent communication. Study Circle Miranda House is the most prominent society which focuses on the ideals and vision of Gandhi. Always been focused on organizing different events which focus on Gandhian principle like Khadi Utsav, adding quizzes based on Gandhi's lives and ideas, which we have always been 10 to 12 years. Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Smriti was formed in September 1984 due to Gandhi Darshan at Rajghat Gandhi Smriti. It is an autonomous body and it's functioning under the constructive advice and financial support of the Ministry of Culture and Government of India. Basic aim and objective of is to propagate the life vision of Mahatma Gandhi, socio-economic and cultural practice. We at Gandhi Study Circle also believe creating this idea and
सर किसी को आवाज मैम अक्षिता जी की आवाज आ रही है कि मेरे को तो आ नहीं रही है सर आई थिंक
हाँ मेरे को भी नहीं आ रही है अक्षिता कैन यू बी
उनका क्योंकि साउंड बहुत कम आ रहा है सर
हाँ अक्षिता बहुत कम आ रहा है शब्द आपका
हाँ नहीं उनका भी सर बिल्कुल वॉइस नहीं आ रहा मैडम अगर आप हेडफोन यूज कर रहे हैं तो आप इसको हटा दीजिए
अब बाहरी आवाज में देखिए।
अक्षिता जी, अगर आपने हेडफोन लगाया हुआ है तो आप प्लीज उसको हटा दीजिए। आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है बिल्कुल भी हमारे पास।
I think, is she there? Hello.
Yes sir, yes sir.
Sanskriti, are you there? Sanskriti? Hello,
Sir,
Sanskriti.
she is trying to join. She got disconnected.
Okay. So actually, Tanishka, you are Tanishka, no?
Yes, sir.
Could you hear Akshita? Actually, I was not able to hear what exactly she
No,
was
sir.
saying.
Sir,
Sorry?
I'm trying to contact Akshita. Just a second.
सर उनका आवाज नहीं आ रहा था, बिल्कुल भी नहीं आ रहा था। अगर किसी को आवाज आ रहा था तो एक बार थंब दिखा दीजिए, अगर किसी को उनकी आवाज आ रही थी तो। मुझे नहीं लगता कि उनकी
नहीं आ
आवाज
रहा
नहीं
था।
आ रही थी।
हाँ।
Sir, the volume
नहीं आ रही
was
थी
very.
उनकी आवाज।
Yeah, Tanishka, yes. Now,
Sir,
Akshita
sir,
has left something.
again.
She will again rejoin. She will rejoin. That's right. So, but Tanishka, can you continue so that we can start the meeting?
Yes, sir. So give me a minute.
Hello? Hello,
सर आप
Tanishka.
स्टार्ट कर दीजिए सर।
हाँ. Should we start? I think everyone, friends. Hello.
Audible.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
That's right. Should we? You got Tanishka. Hello.
Yes, sir. Sir, give me a few minutes. I'm trying to contact them and rectifying the problem.
Okay. Wait for a minute. Yeah.
Yes, sir. We can start now.
Okay. Thank you, friends.
Good evening, everyone. Everyone is keeping well. First of all, we at Gandhi Study Circle pray to Almighty that it give everyone strength to stand in these difficult times. Today, Gandhi Study Circle, Miranda House, in collaboration with Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Smriti, Delhi, is organizing an online certificate course on exploring non-violent communication. Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Samiti was formed in September 1984 by the merger of Gandhi Darshan at Rajghat and Gandhi Smriti at 5 30 January Marg as an autonomous body and is functioning under the constructive advice and financial support from the Ministry of Culture, Government of India. The basic aim and objective of the Samiti are to propagate the life, mission, and thought of Mahatma Gandhi through various socio educational and cultural programs. We all have been very much familiar with Gandhi's idea of nonviolence, but very rarely we have ever dwelt upon the novel idea of nonviolent communication. We all will agree to the fact that the way we communicate and how we communicate has become significant, whether it is through face to face communication or through the online media, as we do today. But there is one thing that we have missed to address is our communication literacy and skill and challenge of unhealthy communication, both personally and professionally, which destroys the social fabric. The solution to this challenge really lies in nonviolent communication. As global citizens, we need to learn the art of self restraint in communication, which is crucial in the practice of nonviolent communication. To understand the nitty-gritties of nonviolent communication, I, on behalf of Gandhi Study Circle, welcome Dr. Vedabhyas Kundu. He serves as the program officer for GSDS and works with Ministry of Culture, Government of India.
Hello. Hello, can we start now, friends? Hello.
Yes, sir. Please start.
Okay. Acha, Gulshan, can you text Rajdeep not to call me up in this number? Because
Okay. I will.
That's why I'm losing the network actually.
Okay.
Okay.
Now I can share the presentation.
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Gandhi Studies Circle, Miranda House, and Sanskriti, who is the president of the Gandhi Studies Circle. It's really wonderful that you all, friends, really wanted that we could have this whole session on non-violent communication with you all. In fact, at the outset, let me, thank you all that you are doing really a wonderful work by trying to develop this Miranda House response team to this pandemic. And as really, I was excited to learn that, as Sanskriti said, almost 300 volunteers of the college are doing work at different level during this pandemic. It is such a wonderful congratulations to each one of you who have really worked hard, who are really working hard in spite of different kind of challenges. In fact, I've been talking to Sanskriti. She has been sharing number of contacts with me of different vendors and all, and it is always great working with all of you, and I really hope that we will continue to work with you in right earnest in days to come. Well, friends, when we are talking of non-violent communication, today we are going to have a very practical session, especially when, say, for instance, at this stage, we are all trying to tackle with this pandemic, you are all volunteering. I'm sure many of you must be facing a situation where there are so many calls you have to handle, and at some point of time, you might get irritated also. But here is the important solution, how we can develop greater engagement with people, whether during this pandemic or otherwise, so that we have a greater engagement with people, we are able to reach out to people. In fact, yesterday when we were having this session on mediation, peer mediation, with a group of students of a particular school here in Dwarka, we were talking on how the online media and the online communication has promoted something called frozen communication. There is no soul to soul communication. Also, in the context of growing materialism, our search for materialistic luxuries, etc., etc., our aim to reach out at the top by any means, it also leads to unhealthy communication, in that sense that we forget on how we can actually reach out to a person, when I'm saying soul to soul communication, heart to heart communication. And when we are talking of a healthy communication system, that is non-violent communication. So friends, let us embark upon this interesting journey today on non-violent communication. And I'm sure, as Sanskriti was saying, that some of you must have done this course on non-violent communication. Also, my colleagues will be sharing with you the link of this particular course. You can also do this course. There are some questions that are there which you need to reply back, and after that you can actually get a certificate out of it. In fact, I would request the Gandhi Studies Circle to, as we are in this pandemic all in the online mode, possibly many of the students would be interested if this link of this course is shared by all friends in Miranda House. That would be such a wonderful thing. So let us start today's session. Let us start here when we are talking about peace. When we are, part of the Gandhi Study Circle, you must be doing a lot of innovative exercises and ideas on to promote different values of Gandhi. One of the most important aspect, and that is much needed in today's world, is how we can contribute to the process of peace. In fact, this is a beautiful and a very, very important statement which UNESCO in 2013 had given. Peace should never be taken for granted. It is an ongoing process, a long-term goal which requires constant engineering, vigilance, and active participation by all individuals. It is a choice to be made in each situation, an everyday life decision to engage in sincere dialogue with other individuals and communities, whether they live a block or a click away. UNESCO. So that means also, in fact, I remember this beautiful quote of Mahatma Gandhi, who says that if you really want to work for peace, it is the responsibility of every individuals to contribute towards the peace. So it is our responsibility to contribute towards peace. It is also important that we engage every individuals around us and communities around us to contribute to the culture of peace. And how do we contribute to the culture of peace? We contribute by promotion of active participation, by dialogues and discourses and discourses which are positive in nature. And what is the fulcrum of our dialogue, our discourses? That is communication. And in that context comes the essence of nonviolent communication. In fact, friends, when we go to any class of journalism, the first thing we are told is that the definition of communication, and that is we cannot not communicate. Think of a situation, friends, when is there a situation where you're not communicating? You may be silent, but you might be communicating with yourselves. So that means our thoughts and ideas are the first and the primary form of communication. And then when we are talking to the others, we are communicating with others. That is the outer communication. So there is the inner communication, there is the outer communication. And also the quality of our relationships, all this is determined by how we are communicating. It could actually lead to spoiling of relationship. It could also bring in, if even if there are differences, we could unite us. It could bring bridges of understanding with the person with whom we might have differences. Next, please. So I've already told you about this, that context here. So friends, especially in these days, what is the biggest challenge? The biggest challenge is how we can, what should be our communication ecosystem? And here, friends, let me tell you that when we are talking of communication ecosystem, it entails our both inner communication and our outer communication. So inner communication and outer communication. Am I audible now, please? Tanya, it seems, sent a message that I'm not audible. So am I audible? Hello, friends.
Yes,
Am I
sir,
audible?
you are.
Sir, you are audible, audible.
Sir, it might be
Okay,
her
okay,
connection.
okay,
It's audible.
okay. So here, when I'm talking of a communication ecosystem, it is both our inner communication and outer communication. Friends, think of a situation when you are very, very, there is turmoil within you. You are, there is a lot of emotions going on around you. Thing. So there, your inner communication becomes, very, very, unhealthy. You are tensed. You are stressed out. Whereas if it is a positive communication ecosystem within you, then you are able to respond to the outer world in a much, much better way. Next, please. Next, please. Gulshan. Hello, Gulshan. Yeah. In this context, let me share with you this very beautiful quote of Lord Buddha. He says that words have both the power to destroy and heal. When words are both true and kind, they can change our world. Remember, the words that you are using when you are communicating with anyone, whether they are your friends, your relatives, your kith and kin, your colleagues, everyone. So you have to keep in mind what kind of words that you are using. It can actually destroy your relationship or heal the relationship. Next, please. So again, friends, this is such an important quote of Mahatma Gandhi. I object to violence because when it appears to do good, the good is only temporary. The evil it does is permanent. I'm sure you agree with this, because when there is a violence, it could temporarily, it will help you. If you're violent, you are very there is extreme reaction from your point. You might, for a time being, you feel that you have really won over the other person, but actually the damage it is going to do both to you and the relationship with the other person, it could be long term. So we have to keep this important point in mind, friends. Next, please. No, we go to the next slide because we will consult. There is people can read here now, friends. This is an important aspect. Please remember, when we are talking of non-violent communication, there are 2-3 important pointers which I like to flag off as we start and embark upon this journey on understanding of non-violent communication. The first and foremost, please keep in mind, when we are talking of non-violent communication, it is not just communication with any other human being. It is not just our human communication, human to human. It is also communication with the nature. It is also communication with all other living beings. In fact, extremely critical when we are talking in these days of the pandemic. I remember last year reading this beautiful quote of Professor Joe Goodall, the famous British primatologist, and she says that the way we are destroying our the habitats of the wild animals, many of them are coming closer to the human habitat, and so the virus, all kinds of virus becomes much easier to get transmitted to human beings. So our communication, that is a symbolic communication with the nature, symbolic communication with all other living beings, are equally important, and so of course the human to human communication. That is the first important point that I wanted to share with you. The second important point when we are talking about nonviolent communication is that this beautiful quote of Abraham Lincoln: we can complain because rose bushes have thorns, or rejoice because thorn bushes have roses. In this context, you see, we are all used to speaking in a particular way. We think that that is the normal, but we must try to see non-violent communication when we practice. Here again, I would like to flag off is that there is no A plus B equals to C formula that I can give you that you become a non-violent communicator. A, you need to have great commitment to really practice non-violent communication in your daily life as a practical thing. B, it is That can be, of course, as a researcher, you could do research, but actually it is totally practical. So we are all used to communicating in a particular way, but when we use the tools and ideas of nonviolent communication, we are basically using different words and pointers which will engage the other person in a totally different way. Like, for instance, this quote of Abraham Lincoln: we can complain because rose bushes have thorns, or rejoice because thorn bushes have roses. That means the usual way that we talk, we can talk in the same, we want to convey the same meaning and the same spirit, but in a totally different way, which will help us get engaged with the other person, and that is something very, very important and critical. Please keep in mind, it helps us to reframe from the usual way that we communicate. Next, please. So that means I've already talked to you about this whole important way of how we reframe our thoughts and ideas. Next one, please. This is a quote of Marshall Rosenberg. He says that nonviolent communication is founded on language and communication skills that strengthen our ability to remain human, even under trying conditions. It guides us in reframing how we express ourselves and hear others. Next, please. So now we are going to talk on why we need to have nonviolent communication ecosystem. So in the first section, we discussed how and the need of a nonviolent communication ecosystem. Now we are going to talk on what exactly is nonviolent communication and its different elements. So let us try to explore on what exactly is nonviolent communication. Friends, like any building which has pillars, no, any building which has pillars, without strong pillars, the building is likely to collapse. In the same way, this whole philosophy of non-violent communication rests on these 5 important pillars of Gandhian non-violence. And these are actually very, very practical. These are nothing, these are not very complicated. In fact, many times when I have sessions with students, many of them say that possibly the Gandhian philosophies are very difficult to, practice in today's world. But when we start talking about these basic 5 pillars of Gandhian non-violence, it becomes very easy. Here, as I pointed out right at the beginning, when we are talking of non-violent communication, it means all different aspects of human to human, human and nature, human and all other living beings. So all these elements, all these pointers, links are all interconnected and talks about the human interconnectedness, human, nature, and all other living beings. So let us start. The first pillar of Gandhian non-violence is respect. That's such a simple thing. You see, unless and until we respect each other, we might have differences, but if we respect each other, it becomes much more easier to handle those differences or disputes. So the first and the basic thing that we need to keep in mind is that how we can promote or enhance our idea of respecting each other, mutual respect. If I respect you, you will respect me. Also, when we respect each other, then it is much easier to understand each other's point of view. Say, for instance, if I don't respect you, then I will not be, my mindset will be such that I will not like to understand what you want to say. So respect leads to greater understanding, and greater understanding leads to greater acceptance of each other's point of views. And that is so very, very important. And when we are talking of acceptance, that means respect leads to greater understanding, and greater understanding leads to acceptance of each other's position. Then we come to the fourth important pillar of Gandhian nonviolence, that is appreciation. Here again, especially when we are talking in today's context, when we are as a nation going through really bad times.
Veda sir, you are not audible.
Now,
Veda sir,
am
we
I
cannot hear
audible?
you.
Can't you hear me?
Sir, you
Hello.
are audible. We can hear you.
You can hear? Am I audible
sir.
now?
Yes,
Being
sir. Yes,
audible.
sir.
Okay.
Yes, now you are audible.
Okay. It's a real problem of connectivity. So anyway, when we are talking in today's sense, we are all so negative, so much of negative news coming around, negative emotions, we don't know what to do. But friends, have we ever thought, have we tried to see how we can get over with these negative emotions with some positivity? It's so important to remain positive now. It's so important to promote positive energies within us at this stage. It's so important to promote, have positive emotions, because the more negative we are, then we go further into that abyss of negativity. So, and also the challenge before each one of us in today's world is that we remain positive so that we can make others positive. So in that context, it's so important that we try to appreciate the positive things that are happening around us. For instance, all of you, these 300 students, as Sanskriti said, all are volunteering to do something for the society. That needs to be appreciated. It needs to appreciate it. There are hundreds and thousands of people across the country who are trying to do something for their fellow beings, and that needs to be appreciated. When we start appreciating the positive things that are around us, positive things which I am doing, then it is all the more that we get over with our negative emotions, because negativity leads stressed out situation, negativity leads to tension, and we are in a problematic situation. Then the next important, the fifth pillar of Gandhian nonviolence is compassion. Friends, so important in today's world. How we can understand and feel the suffering of the other person. That is so important. Compassion. We need to develop compassion, skills of compassion. We will come to compassion later in this when we are talking about the elements. Now let us go to those 12 important elements of nonviolent communication. These are the 5 pillars. Now we go to the elements of nonviolent communication. So please share the next slide, please. Hello. Okay, we continue because it seems there is issue. So the next, we will now talk about the 12 important pillars of, 12 important elements of nonviolent communication. The first, and all these elements are equally important. All these elements are, all these elements are interlinked and interwoven. So let us start with the first important element. But before that, as students, obviously, when we are coming to a class situation in a workshop or something, we are inquisitive to know that particular term. What does nonviolent communication means? So Gulshan, can you please share the what exactly is nonviolent communication, the definition of nonviolent communication with our friends? Gulshan. Hello, Gulshan. Can you hear me? Hello. 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 Hello, Gulshan. Okay, it seems there is issue. Okay, the when we are talking of non-violent communication, it is basically hello, is there am I audible?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir,
Hello.
you are.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
okay. It seems there is a problem with Mr. Gulshan's connectivity. He has shared it. So please, friends, please see in the screen the definition of nonviolent communication. It has been given. You see, I've been doing a lot of work on nonviolent communication, and in fact, we have been having this kind of workshops with students from all across the world, and many of the students want on different dimensions of nonviolent communication, like how we counter the issue of hate speech, how we use promote our conflict skills of conflict resolution, how we can promote human interconnectedness using nonviolent communication. But let us see the basic definition of nonviolent communication. To me, nonviolent communication literacy. This is not for Thakkarji. He was a senior Gandhian. He passed away in 2018, and he was someone who did commendable work in Nagaland. He was from Gujarat. He was a Gujarati who worked in Nagaland for more than 4 decades, 5 decades, and worked And here is his definition of nonviolent communication. To me, nonviolent communication literacy would mean how our communication efforts should be nonviolent, how our ability and capacity to communicate not only with ourselves but with our family and society be nonviolent in all aspects, and overall, how the entire process of communication, whether between individuals, groups, communities, and the world at large, should be non-violent in nature. You see, this is self-explanatory. That means non-violence, our communication being non-violent in all aspects, whether it is verbal communication, non-verbal communication, our thoughts and ideas. In fact, friends, say for instance, I may be using non-violent communication when I'm talking, but at the back of my mind, if I have some ill will or ill thoughts on you, so that is not non-violent communication. So non-violent communication is a more holistic and totalistic in its approach. So now continue please, Gulshan. Next slide please. He further says, Natwa Thakkaji, this would entail deep understanding of the art and science of nonviolence and its centrality in our daily actions. It is not just verbal and non-verbal communication. Non-verbal communication would also include whether our thoughts and ideas are non-violent or not. Yes, please. Next, please. Now we are going to talk about the different elements of nonviolent communication. The first element of nonviolent communication, Gulshan, if you could kindly share the next slide, is the first element is promotion of nonviolence in all our speech and action. That is the first important element of nonviolent communication. And as I said, whether it is our verbal communication or non-verbal communication, that is very, very important. So that is the first element of non-violent communication. So that is important. That is non-violence in our verbal, non-verbal communication, and also our thoughts and ideas. Then we come to the second important element of non-violent communication, and that is again very, very important, friends. That is how our communication process. Gulshan, can you hear us? Hello, Gulshan. Now we go, please go to the second element of nonviolent communication. Please go to the second element of nonviolent communication. So friends, this was the first element. The second element is our self-communication. Friends, you must be knowing about intrapersonal communication. There are different forms of communication, you see. Intrapersonal communication, which means self-communication, interpersonal communication, group communication, and of course, the last one is mass communication. When we are talking about the second important element of non-violent communication, that is basically how we need to be self-aware. Extremely important. You see, each one of us have those negative emotions amongst us. How we are, if we are alert, if we are self-aware, if we know all the things that are going around with us, within us, we will be able to negotiate some of the complexities of the challenges that are there in the outside world. And in that context, our intrapersonal communication is extremely important. Intrapersonal communication is of two types. One is the self-communication, and the second is the inner dialogue. Friends, self-communication, when I talk to myself, that is self-communication. And when we are talking of inner dialogue, it is like, say, for instance, I'm talking to my friend, I'm angry with my friend, so I'm talking within myself, what I'm going to tell my friend, how I'm going to react with my friend, so on and so forth. So that is my inner dialogue. I'm talking to someone within myself. So the important things at this stage is to understand that our inner dialogue and our self-communication remains the actually important, that is constructive in nature. If it is destructive in nature, that will get reflected in the outside world, and we will become very violent. Yeah, we will might use unhealthy communication practices. So that is the second important element of nonviolent communication. The third important element of nonviolent communication is the idea of importance of avoiding stereotypes. Friends, I think we have lost Gulshan because the slides, third slide, Please go to the third one. Hello, Gulshan. Hello, Gulshan. Can you hear us? Yes. Use of appropriate and positive language. So important in every time when we communicate. You see, the words that we use is so very important. I remember, friends, there is basically, I remember doing this workshop with the Saket District Court judges and lawyers. And after 1 month, I happened to go back to these judges and lawyers and tried to have a feedback. So one of the in fact, the president of the bar association, he said that you see, as lawyers, we are used to be argumentative and arguing very aggressively when we are talking about the whole case in front of the bench. But after this session on nonviolent communication, I feel that we might, our spirit of what we want to say remains the same, but if we are using different type of words, if we are using more appropriate and positive language, then we need not be aggressive, yet we are putting our point. And he said for the last 1 month we have been doing that. I have been doing that, and it has great response, and I feel consciously that it is much better way than being very, very aggressive. You can get a lot of things done when you are using positive language and appropriate language. In that context, please, we want to share with you this beautiful quote of Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Gulshan, can you please? Yes. Language is very powerful. Language does not just describe quality. Language creates the reality it describes. We should try to take responsibility of our action, words, feelings, and not blame others for these. Now we go to the next important element of nonviolent communication. Yes, Gulshan, can we go to the next slide, please? Avoiding of stereotypes. Friends, many of us get entrapped into this problem of stereotyping. Possibly, if you remember, if there is a pickpocket, someone's pocket has been picked in the road, and there is some boy who is a street, homeless person or someone in the street, we might think, "Yare, isi ne kiya hoga, isi ne pickpocket kiya hoga." So that's stereotyping. Or say we are handling people with disabilities or any other type of different groups and faith and communities. We generally get entrapped into these issues of stereotyping. We need to get out of that way so that we have a much better communication, healthy communication. We indulge in healthy communications irrespective of the background which they are coming from, and that is a challenge before all of us. So now we go to the next important element of nonviolent communication, that is power of empathy. So important, so important, especially as we are fighting this pandemic together. If we are not empathetic to the person who is having suffering, if we are not empathetic on the way the other person is, having to go through, it will be so difficult. In fact, as we have been, we have been attuned to a lot of these materialistic goals. We have been attuned to a lot of trying to achieve too many things at a very short time. All these actually issues leads to a situation where there seems to be empathy deficit in the world. What is the challenge before all of us is how we get over with this empathy deficit. We need to develop our skills of empathy to be able to, reach out to people, understand, be there in their shoes and understand what they're going through. So power of empathy is an important element of nonviolent communication. Next, please. The sixth important element is compassion. We have already talked about compassion, trying to understand the suffering, feel the suffering of others. Friends, what happens is that there is situations where, we many of us are attuned to seeing things from a very, very narrow perspective. But once we start becoming compassionate, we will be able to see things from different lenses, from different angles and different perspectives. Also, it will help us, develop something which I would call as inner transformation. The more compassionate we are, the more inner transformation we go through. So compassion is extremely important element of nonviolent communication. Next one, please. Flexibility and openness in our communication. Friends, let us think of a situation where you had sort of dispute with a friend of yours, and you feel you are totally correct, and what the other person has is there, the other person feels the other person is wrong. Much of the problem that we find in our relationships is because of not being flexible and open. We feel that what we think is correct, not the other person. We are not flexible, we are not open. Okay, we might have a difference of opinion, we might have a fight with someone, might have a tip off with someone, but let us no, we need to keep on engaging. Let us remain open in our communication. And if we are open in our communication, then much of the problems of dysfunctional communication, uh, you know, we are able to get rid of it. So that is something we need to keep in mind. Next, please. Next is expression of gratitude. Friends, such an important aspect of nonviolent communication. The whole idea of thanksgiving, thanking people, thanking even situations because of which you might have benefited, you might have learned something from somewhere or the other. Gratitude. In fact, friends, all these important altruistic tendencies, if we see now, empathy, compassion, gratitude, so these are actually linked to the neurosciences of the brain. So the more we express gratitude, the more we use empathy in our relationships, in our way we work, the more we develop our skills of compassion. We are actually, it leads to our well-being. We are, there is more inner peace within us, and also we are able to contribute peacefully in the outer world. So also, very importantly, we will be able to control our stress and anger because of these altruistic tendencies. Next slide, please. Connecting with needs of others, that's again an important element of nonviolent communication. Again, much of the problem that we might have with a particular individual is because that we are not able to understand, we are not able to discern what are those needs of that particular person because of which she or he is behaving with me in such a way. We don't know. But friends, I can tell you, if we are able to connect with the needs of others, we are able to discern why that particular person is behaving in that particular way, then we will be able to connecting with the needs of their, then we will be able to handle that conflict, handle that problem in a much better way. So connecting with needs of others is very critical. Next, please. Active and deep listening skills. Very important. Friends, many people feel that many of us are losing the skills of listening. No, the more we listen, friends, then the better it is. And in fact, there are a lot of studies that have shown that the more we listen, the we grow as individuals, we grow as human beings. And when we listen, when we are actively and listening to the other person deeply, then there is a whole aura, there is a whole spirit of mutual engagement, because the other person feels that you are listening to him or her. And similarly, when I feel that you are listening to you, then there is something, I feel that we are connected. There is a greater engagement between me and you. So listening is such an important attribute of nonviolent communication. Next, please. Moralistic judgment, the last two elements of nonviolent communication: avoidance of moralistic judgment and avoidance of negative evaluative language. Say, for instance, you are having a tiff off. Say there is a problem, you have done something in the classroom and your teacher is straight away saying ki, hey, you can't even do that, or you have not done well with your exams, with your grades. Then your teacher yells at you ki, say you are a totally useless student, you can't do anything. These are the, if you reflect closely, we are all attuned to have these kind of moralistic judgments in everyday life. And friends, believe me, these type of moralistic judgment, when we try and jump and try to pass judgment on others, it is something which we can call as life alienating. Basically, you feel there is a problem in the communication with that particular person. You are demotivating that particular person. And the last one is the negative evaluative language. Again, it is something similar. When we are again, no, we will say that, hey, you are a lazy person. Hey, you are totally, something like that. These kind of words, laziness, and this, you are totally dumbo, those kind of words that we are using many times, that is again demotivating. So friends, how is it is important that we need to avoid these moralistic judgments and the negative evaluative languages, so that we are able to have a more healthy communication with the person with whom we are communicating. We don't end up demotivating any persons. Fine. So, Gulshan, can we go to the next slides, please? Yes, this I have already covered. Now we go to the last stream. So we have talked about why we need nonviolent communication. We have talked about what is nonviolent communication and its elements. And now in the last few slides, we will quickly try to find out how we can practice nonviolent communication in our daily lives. As we discuss those 5 pillars of Gandhian nonviolence, we are in a position to reflect, self-reflect and self-introspect, that if we adhere to these 5 pillars, how we can promote positivity in our lives, how we can avoid disputes and differences that may crop up in our lives. Please self-respect on that, because if you are respecting people, if you are developing greater understanding, then you will be able to avoid many disputes and the differences that may crop in our life. Next, please. Then, how using nonviolent communication will help us to manage our negative communications. The negative thoughts actually prevents us from being focused. It is destructive and drains our energy. So the challenge before all of us is that we need to get over with our negative and unhealthy communication. Next, please. Also, as we are talking about negative emotions, we have already discussed, I tried to point out to you that each one of us might be having different forms of negative emotions within us. How we are able to manage these negative emotions and harness them into positive energy is a challenge. And we need to constantly work on this, because if we, as I told you, if we continue to remain in the abyss of negativities, we will become more negative. So we have to come out of that, and for that we need to ensure that we are indulging in healthy communication at all the time, whether within ourselves and or out with the outside world. That is something very important. Next, please. Now, from the negative emotions, we go on how we use non-violent communication for anger management. If you self-introspect and self-reflect all the points that we discussed, especially those 12 important elements of nonviolent communication, and on what exactly is nonviolent communication, you will be able to understand that if we are practicing it, we will be able to channelize our anger constructively. You see, all of us get angry at some point of time or the other, but how we handle those situations and avoid the stressful situations is something very, very critical. So now we go to the next important slides, that is conflict resolution. The important point that we discussed was that how we, when we are using non-violent communication, it helps us to reframe from the negative way or the negative perceptions of a particular situation. So in that context, when we are talking of conflict resolution, that is, if we are in conflict with any person in any way, when we use these forms of healthy communication, then we are able to resolve our conflicts more constructively. We are able to expand our levels of empathy and ability to resolve the conflicts. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yes, when we are talking about all those important important element, altruistic tendencies we are talking about. That is, talking about the gratitude, when we are talking about empathy, when we are talking of compassion. In fact, a lot of psychological studies have been done, and it shows that when we are, attuned to these altruistic tendencies, it is helps in our emotional bridge building. It helps in developing connections. It helps in reaching out to communities and promotion of volunteerism and acts of giving. Next slide, please. As we come towards the end of this session, of course, then when we are talking about the healthy communication, it is like a stress buster, friend. Definitely, when you start using it in your daily lives, you will be able to see and reflect how it helps in easing out your stress level. Next, please. Next important, these are important elements that we are able to contribute to encouragement of dialogues, contribute to cohesion and a harmonious coexistence. Yes, please. Next, please. Of course, as people who are working in a team, you people are doing some excellent work, especially in the context of the pandemic. Team building becomes an extremely critical element. So when we are attuned to using nonviolent communication, we will be able to have a greater sense of solidarity. We will be able to develop empathetic relationships, and hence the greater trust amongst team builders. It and actually contributes to the whole idea of team building. Next, please. So now the last few slides, we end with this, some of these beautiful quotes here. This is of Martin Luther King. He says that we must learn to live together as brothers, or we will perish together as fools. Next slide, please. This is such a profound statement from Nelson Mandela, the former president of South Africa. Friends, if you remember, he was there for 27 years in the prison. He was imprisoned for 27 years. And as he was coming out of the prison, you see, any other person would have so much of ill will, so much of hatred towards the people who had imprisoned him. But what he says, it is so important to look at it. As I walked out of the door towards the gate that would lead me to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I will still be in prison. Such an important and profound statement, such an important statement of forgiveness. Next, please. The last slide, I suppose. Yes, Gulshan, yes. So I would request all of you, Gulshan, please share the link. The last slide, the link is there of this, and we would request all of you to kindly, every one of you, and share this link with everyone. This course, free online course on nonviolent communication. It is very simple. It will give you a greater overview on what exactly is nonviolent communication and how we will be able to promote healthy communication in your daily lives. So now we come to the end of this presentation, and any one of you who have questions, you're free to ask, and we can open the the session for discussions. Yes, please. Any questions, friends? Anyone having any? Yes,
You
please.
can put in your questions in chat box.
Yeah, or you can even ask, unmute yourself and you can ask also. That's not an issue.
Sir, I have one question.
Yes. Yes, please.
I just want to know which thing motivates you more about Gandhiji?
So, can you be louder, please, Tanya?
Yes, sir. I'm just repeating my question. Which thing
Yeah.
motivates you more about Gandhiji and inspires you a lot?
About non-violent communication.
No. I'm asking which is the most appropriate thing you find that this is the very good thing I found in Gandhiji, and I should follow this thing that what I was.
Okay. I get it. I got it. You see, we must be motivated by his whole idea of peace and non-violence, and that is so important in today's world. We must be motivated by his whole approach of volunteerism. You see, in fact, of the numerous workshops that we have been conducting with students from all across the world, you see, it is amazing to see that people have such great reverence for him, and especially his whole context and idea of peace and non-violence. And it is so important in today's world, where there are so many conflicts and of different kinds, of different dimensions, of different complexities. So in that backdrop, his idea of peace and non-violence should be an important starting point, guiding post for every one of us to contribute to peace within ourselves and peace in the world. Yes, please. Fine.
So
Sir,
I want.
Akshita has a question in the chat box. I'll
That's
read
right.
that.
Please read, please.
Yes, sir. Sir, she asked, how can we actually make non-violent communication a possibility in promoting gender equality, as when masculine ideas are not always offer that space of communication and acceptance of thoughts that comes from a woman and other gender?
Mhm. In fact, Tanish, I think Akshita has asked this question. Well,
Yes, sir.
actually, when we are talking about non-violent communication, you see those important pillars of Gandhian non-violence: respect, understanding. Also, when we are talking about those elements of non-violent communication, empathy, you see, compassion, gratitude, avoidance of stereotypes, they ensure the whole idea, the whole frame of gender equality. Because if there is no equality, if we are getting entrapped into this whole idea of stereotyping in the context of gender, in issues of gender, then we are not using healthy communication. We are again indulging in unhealthy communication. So non-violent communication, I firmly believe, is a very important pointer on how we can promote gender equality and how we can ensure that there is respect for all forms of lives, not just male or female, but all forms of lives and nature that is there in this universe. Yes, please.
So,
Next.
Mavia asks, what
Hmm.
has been your experience in practical lives after implementing non-violent communication?
You see, one of the most interesting thing that happens when you are using non-violent communication, and I practically felt it, is that key, like it is, as I told you, you reframe from the usual way that you are used to talking. So actually, many times when you are trying to engage with the other person, even if the other person has some kind of a ill will or some kind of a thing on you, they don't want to listen to you, but when you are approaching them, trying to engage with them using these tools and strategies of non-violent communication, you actually end up making the other person virtually defenseless. That's been my own experience. And also you are able to engage with people who are who are more difficult to engage with, because you are actually reaching out to them. You are trying to open the doors of communication. You are flexible with them. You are using different strategies like empathy and compassion. So even with difficult persons, the experience has been that it becomes much easier to handle them. Yes, please.
There's a question from Sanskriti.
Yeah.
In today's time, the feeling of hate is ruling every mind, especially the hot blooded youth who have lost the trait of being calm and composed and get
Mhm.
agitated easily by getting involved in violence. How the
Mhm.
non violent communication helps in coping this precious youth energy?
Well, that is something a very important aspect. How we can counter hate or hate speech using non-violent communication. In fact, this is a topic which we have been having numerous workshops, especially some of these universities, Spain, have been interested in this very area. In fact, one of the important thing that has been coming out of these kind of workshops has been that many of the students feel that, especially you see, especially in the online platforms, there are so much of hate speech and hate action. So they feel that when you develop a whole team of non-violent communicators, you can actually help in countering them. You see, United Nations has already come out with a UN strategy and plan of action to counter hate speech, and in that context, non-violent communication is very, very, very important, because the plan of action talks about engagement of those people who are indulging in hate speech, trying to develop communication with them, trying to linkage with them, to persuade them to use different tools of non-violent persuasion to see that they don't indulge in hate speech. So in that context of developing a whole cadre or an army of non-violent communicators can be a very useful tool to counter these problems of hate speech, I feel. And this is what has been coming out of some of these workshops that we have been doing with some of these universities from different countries. Yes, please, Tanishka.
Yes, sir, the questions are over. I
Okay.
request you all please switch on your. No, sir, just a minute. Srashti Jan has posted a question.
Mhm.
How we can differentiate cowardness from non-violence? Sometimes practicing non-violence become our weakness, and other person can take benefit of it. How we can overcome these difficulties?
You see, in fact, as Gandhi says, that non-violence is not something for the coward. It is basically for the people who are brave, because you will have to have real courage to be non-violent. No, it is so easy to become violent and do things, but it is very, very challenging to be able to be non-violent. I remember, I will like to share with you this brilliant conversation I had with someone called Mr. Christian Bethelson, who was for 27 years of his life, he was an armed rebel in Liberia. He was fighting the he was into violence during the Liberian Civil War. And then what happened was, no, he was like a connoisseur of violence, killing people. And as a chance would be that the Liberian Civil War had come to an end, and he was trying, because his job was, his business into violence. He was trying to join the rebels of Ivory Coast. So he was trying to get over to the Ivory Coast when his vehicle in which he was carrying arms, it had got they were damaged, and he was trying to get it right. But then, that as a chance, he met people from an interesting organization in Liberia called the Everyday Gandhis, who were involved in grassroots level peace building. And that that interaction with those people from Everyday Gandhis transformed his life. And he says that when he was in the armed, when he was a rebel commander, it was so easy to go and shoot people. In fact, one other rebel commander actually killed 5 members of his family, and he wanted to take revenge. He wanted to go there, but when he got transformed, he says that now, in fact, he told me in the interview that to him, Gandhi is the father of peace in the world. He says it is all the more challenging. It's so easy to kill a person, but to become non-violent in trying situations, to try to use tools and strategies of non-violence in difficult situations, it is something which needs a lot of courage. It is not for the cowards to do that. It is for the brave people to ensure that they use non-violence. In fact, now he is someone who is promoting the mindfulness communication, mindfulness practices in different countries across the world, Mr. Christian Bethelson. So I think that is a very interesting and important living example of how nonviolence is much superior to violence. Yes, Tanishka.
Sir, this is the question asked by Ishita. What has been your biggest takeaway from non-violent communication?
Well, you see, ever since we have started working on this, and like obviously I can't be a perfect person, but I have tried my best. I try my best to use these tools of non-violent communication in my own life. But one of the biggest takeaway is that you are able to engage with people in a much better way. You are able to engage with people, who might be difficult to handle. You might one is able to reach out to so many people all across the world, and it is such a powerful, I can say, weapon to bring people together, to bring people together for a whole cause of peace, whole cause of promotion of non-violence. I think that has been my I really enjoy doing these sessions and try to engage with people, and so many people are so committed to doing this. There's so much interest in this whole area, I find, of lately, and not just in India but all across the world, right from African countries like Malawi to Uganda to Liberia to countries like Spain to Bangladesh, so many countries. Yes, please, Tanishka.
I think all of our doubts are clear, sir. There are no more questions.
Thank you.
Now I request you, all of you, to please switch on your cameras. We'll be doing a small photography session.
Okay. We have done it, Tanishka.
Yes, sir, waiting for all of them.
So I would request all of you to kindly do this course. That would be such a wonderful thing. And we would love to continue to work with the study circle for other activities. I believe you have some your exams, so we would love to see that how work further together to do such meaningful activities involving other students from other colleges. Is it done?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I hope it's done. One of our volunteers is doing that.
Okay. I would request you to kindly share the photographs with
Yes,
me
sir.
in the WhatsApp. Sanskriti is having my numbers. Thank you. Thank you. Should we end the session? Tanishka, you have unmuted yourself. Tanishka, you please.
Yes, yes.
So,
Now, sir, our session. Sanskriti has posted the vote of thanks in the chat box, and I would
okay.
like to read all of you. I would like to extend my gratitude to you, sir, for introducing us with such a novel concept which has so much practical implication in our daily life. We all are highly obliged that you took time from your busy schedule to enlighten us. I would like to thank each participant to join us today with full enthusiasm in our last event of this year. I hope in future our new union will organize more amazing events for you all. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. We will share the recording with all. Yes. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you very much, sir. And all of
Thank
the
you.
members who
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye.